The Vorthen High Command emergency meeting was held in the deepest bunker on their homeworld, surrounded by shields and weapons that could destroy entire fleets. Fleet Admiral Krex. Tar was a veteran of 200 battles who had never known defeat. But now he sat staring at tactical displays that showed the systematic destruction of his empire. In 6 months, the humans had destroyed 47 Vorthen military installations, rescued over 2,000 human slaves, and killed more than 50,000 Vorthen soldiers. The numbers were bad enough, but the way the humans fought was what truly terrified the alien commanders. They fought like demons who had crawled out of the deepest hell. The humans used tactics that violated every rule of civilized warfare. When their ships were damaged beyond repair, they would ram them into Vorthen battleships rather than surrender. When they were outnumbered, they would detonate their own reactors to take as many enemies as possible with them. They fought with the fury of a species that had nothing left to lose. Admiral Krex. Tar had studied the tactical recordings from dozens of battles, and he could not understand how the humans kept winning. The human ships were individually smaller and less heavily armed than Vorthen vessels, but they moved with coordination that seemed almost supernatural. They fought like a single organism with thousands of parts. The humans had also learned to use the Vorthen's own technology against them. Human hackers led by Lieutenant Besuha could take control of alien systems and turn Vorthen weapons against their own ships. They had modified captured alien equipment to be more deadly than the original designers had thought possible. Captain Cho Yunwoo had become a name that Vorthen mothers used to frighten their children into obedience. His ship, the Hen of Vengeance, had been spotted in 12 different star systems in the same week, which should have been impossible. The aliens had begun to believe that the human captain could bend space and time to his will. Psychological warfare was destroying Vorthen morale faster than the physical battles. Human voices appeared on alien communication networks speaking perfect Vorthen and reciting the names of the dead from New Sol Station. The broadcasts always ended with the same haunting words: "Please, they are just babies." The humans had learned to use the aliens' own fear against them. They would hack into Vorthen entertainment systems and replace the programs with footage from the massacre. Alien families would sit down to watch their favorite shows only to see human children being murdered by Vorthen soldiers. Lieutenant Besuha had become the voice of human vengeance, intercepting alien communications and replacing them with recordings of the massacre. Vorthen soldiers would try to call their families and hear the final words of Dr. Park Hannah instead of their loved ones' voices. The psychological damage was devastating. The Vorthen civilians were beginning to crack under the pressure. They had been told that humans were weak and primitive, but now they saw footage of human ships destroying their most powerful battleships with weapons that seemed like magic. Children had nightmares about human soldiers coming to take revenge for New Sol Station. The alien media tried to downplay the human attacks, but the evidence was impossible to ignore. Entire Vorthen fleets had been destroyed by forces that should have been no match for them. The humans were not just winning, they were making it look easy while using tactics that defied understanding. Other alien species were watching the war with growing alarm. The Nexari Federation publicly condemned the original Vorthen attack on New Sol Station, even though they had their own dark history of conquest. The Kelthans, who had been helped by humans, offered military support to Earth. Even the warlike Zephyrian Empire reconsidered their expansion plans after watching footage of human tactics. The Zephyrians were aggressive warriors who respected strength, but they had never seen anything like the cold, calculating fury that humans displayed in battle. The Vorthens tried to negotiate with other species for military assistance, but found that no one wanted to risk angering the humans. The galaxy had learned that humanity's peaceable nature had been a choice, not a weakness, and that choice could be revoked by anyone foolish enough to hurt human children. Admiral Krextar received daily reports of new human attacks, each one more devastating than the last. The humans were not trying to conquer Vorthen territory, they were systematically destroying everything that made the Vorthen Dominion function. They attacked supply lines, communication networks, and civilian infrastructure with surgical precision. The human strategy was brilliant in its simplicity. They were not fighting a war of conquest, they were fighting a war of extermination. The goal was not to rule the Vorthan Empire, but to make sure it could never threaten human families again, every Vorthan military installation was marked for destruction. The aliens tried to use human prisoners as shields, but the humans had developed tactics to rescue their people while still destroying their targets. Dr. Shin Yejin had created weapons that could selectively target alien biology while leaving humans unharmed. The technology was so advanced it seemed like magic. Captain Cho Hyun-woo had personally rescued over 300 human slaves, each time leaving behind a message carved into the wreckage of destroyed alien ships. "Remember New Seoul," the words had become a battle cry that struck terror into alien hearts across the galaxy. The Vorthan military was beginning to collapse under the psychological pressure. Soldiers deserted their posts rather than face human attack ships. Officers refused dangerous assignments because they knew the humans showed no mercy to anyone who had participated in the massacre. The aliens had made a crucial mistake when they decided to broadcast the New Seoul massacre to other species. They had thought it would demonstrate Vorthan power and make other civilizations fear them. Instead, it had given humans a complete record of every atrocity committed against their people. The humans used this footage as a weapon, broadcasting it to Vorthan populations along with the names and faces of every soldier who had participated in the massacre. The aliens who had laughed while murdering human families now found themselves hunted by opponents who knew exactly what they had done. The Vorthan High Command tried to suppress the broadcasts, but the humans had learned to hack every communication system in the galaxy. Lieutenant Bae Suha could take control of alien networks and make them broadcast whatever she wanted. The psychological warfare was more effective than any physical weapon. Admiral Krextar realized that his empire was doomed. The humans were not going to stop until every Vorthan who had been involved in the massacre was dead. The aliens had awakened something in humanity that they did not understand and could not control. The Vorthan civilians were demanding that their government negotiate with the humans, but the aliens had made negotiation impossible through their actions. The humans had made it clear that they would accept nothing less than complete justice for the innocent people who had died. The galaxy was learning that there were consequences for attacking peaceful species. The humans had been kind and helpful neighbors who shared their knowledge and assisted anyone in need. But they had also shown that they could become the most dangerous enemies in the universe when their families were threatened. The Vorthan Dominion was about to face the full fury of an aroused humanity, and every alien species in the galaxy was watching to see what would happen when the most peaceful race in known space finally unleashed their complete military might. The terror that the Vorthans felt was nothing compared to what was coming. The humans were gathering their forces for a final assault that would end the war and deliver justice for New Seoul Station. The galaxy would never forget what happened when aliens made the mistake of murdering human children. The entire Earth Defense Force assembled at the edge of Vorthan space like a storm cloud gathering before the final lightning strike. Admiral Han Kyung-soo stood on the bridge of the flagship, watching thousands of human warships take their positions in perfect formation. Each ship carried weapons that could crack planets and crews who had been forged in the fires of justified rage. The human fleet was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen before. The ships moved with precision that seemed supernatural and carried weapons that pushed the boundaries of physics. Dr. Shin Yejin had created technologies that could manipulate gravity, bend space and time, and selectively target alien biology while leaving humans untouched. Captain Cho Hyun-woo flew his ship, the Hana Vengeance, in the front rank alongside pilots whose families had been touched by the massacre in some way. These were not conquerors seeking territory or glory. These were avengers seeking justice for the innocent people who had died at New Seoul Station. Lieutenant Bae Suha coordinated communications between the thousands of human ships, using systems that could hack into any alien network in the galaxy. She had spent months learning every detail of Vorthan military organization and had identified the location of every war criminal who had participated in the massacre. The Vorthan homeworld was surrounded by their entire remaining fleet, 600 battleships and 2,000 smaller vessels protected by planetary shields that could withstand the weapons of most civilizations. The aliens had gathered every military asset they possessed to defend their capital world. Admiral Krextar stood in the command center on Vorthen Prime watching the human fleet approach on his sensors. He had fought in hundreds of battles, but he had never seen ships move with such coordination or carry weapons that seemed to bend the laws of physics. The alien commander knew he was facing something beyond his understanding. The battle began when the human ship suddenly accelerated to impossible speeds using gravitational manipulation to change direction instantly. The Vorthen fleet opened fire with every weapon they had, but the human vessels were already somewhere else. When the energy beams arrived, Captain Cho Hyun-woo led his squadron through the alien formation like a knife cutting through flesh. His ship weapons fired projectiles accelerated to significant fractions of light speed that passed completely through Vorthen battleships, leaving holes that went from one side to the other. The human ships used tactics that defied every rule of space combat. They would disappear into the corona of the system star and emerge behind enemy formations. They would accelerate chunks of asteroids to incredible speeds and use them as kinetic weapons. They fought like predators who had evolved specifically to hunt. Vorthen's Lieutenant Bae Suha hacked into the alien communication networks and began broadcasting the names of every human who had died at New Sol Station. The voices of the dead seemed to follow the Vorthen ships as they tried to retreat. Dr. Park Hannah final words echoed through alien comm systems. Please, they are just babies. The Vorthen planetary shields flickered and failed as human weapons struck them with energies that the alien engineers had never imagined possible. Dr. Shin Yejin gravity manipulation systems created artificial black holes that consumed entire sections of the defensive network. The shields collapsed like soap bubbles, but Admiral Han Kyung-soo had not come to destroy the Vorthen homeworld. He had come to deliver justice. The human fleet weapons were designed to disable alien ships without killing their crews. The Admiral wanted the Vorthens to survive so they could remember what happened when they murdered human families. The battle lasted 18 hours as human ships systematically destroyed every Vorthen military vessel while avoiding unnecessary casualties. The alien crews were left floating in space in their emergency pods, watching their empire crumble around them. They had learned what it felt like to be helpless. When the last Vorthen battleship surrendered, Admiral Han Kyung-soo broadcast his terms. Across the galaxy, the aliens would return every human slave they had taken. They would pay reparations to the families of everyone who had died at New Sol Station. They would submit to galactic war crimes tribunals, but most importantly, the Vorthens would serve as a warning to every species in the galaxy. The peaceful humans they had known were still there, still willing to trade and share knowledge and help anyone in need, but they would never again be seen as easy prey. The rescue of the final group of human slaves was broadcast to every civilized world in known space. Children who had been taken from New Sol Station during the massacre were reunited with relatives who had thought they were dead. The joy of the reunions was matched by the sorrow for those who would never come home. Little Park So-min and Kim Jae-woo were now teenagers who had survived the massacre, and the Vorthen Supply Depot at Kepler Station was a massive complex built into an asteroid where the aliens stored weapons and fuel for their war fleets. The depot was defended by 6 battleships and had shields that could stop the weapons of most civilizations. The Vorthens who worked there felt completely safe because they believed humans were too weak and primitive to threaten them. The depot commander was a veteran warrior named General Thek, who had conquered 12 different species. For the Vorthen Dominion, he spent his days selling human slaves to other alien races and bragging about how easy it had been to destroy New Sol Station. He kept recordings of the massacre playing on screens throughout the depot to entertain his soldiers. General Thek was eating his morning meal when the proximity alarms started screaming. The sensors showed 12 small ships approaching at impossible speeds, moving in patterns that defied the laws of physics. The general looked at his screens and laughed because he thought some primitive species was trying to attack. His heavily defended depot captain Cho Hyun-woo led the squadron of human ships through the asteroid field surrounding the depot using gravitational manipulation to change direction instantly. His ship, the Hana Vengeance, moved like a living thing, dodging between space rocks and energy beams. The other 11 ships followed his lead with precision that made them look like a school of deadly fish. The Vorthen Battleships opened fire with plasma cannons that could melt mountains, but the human ships were already somewhere else. When the beams arrived, the humans used the asteroids as shields and weapons, accelerating chunks of rock to incredible speeds and hurling them at the alien vessels. The first Vorthan battleship exploded before its crew realized what was happening. Captain Cho Hyun-woo remembered his wife dying in the medical center while trying to help Dr. Park Hana save wounded children. He remembered watching the footage of her final moments and making a promise to her memory that he would make the aliens pay for what they had done. His ship weapons fired projectiles that had been accelerated to significant fractions of light speed. The projectiles hit the second Vorthan battleship and passed completely through it, leaving holes that went from one side to the other. The alien ship lost power and started spinning out of control, its crew screaming in languages that the humans had learned to understand perfectly. The ship crashed into an asteroid and exploded in a ball of fire. Lieutenant Bae Suha was coordinating the attack from her communications station, hacking into the Vorthan networks and turning their own systems against them. She sent viruses through their computers that made their weapons fire at each other instead of at the human ship. She broadcast the sounds of human children crying over the alien communication channels. The third and fourth Vorthan battleships tried to retreat, but the human ships were faster and more maneuverable. The aliens had been built for fighting enemies who followed the normal rules of space combat. They were not prepared for opponents who would fly their ships through the corona of a star to gain tactical advantage. Dr. Shin Yejin weapons performed exactly as designed. The gravity manipulation systems crushed the hull of the fifth battleship like an invisible giant hand. The energy projection systems melted the armor of the sixth ship and exposed the crew to the vacuum of space. The entire battle lasted less than 15 minutes and not a single human ship was damaged, but Captain Cho Hyun-woo did not stop there. The human ships landed on the depot asteroid, and the crews went inside to rescue the human slaves who were being held in the storage areas. The aliens had kept the humans in cages, like animals, feeding them scraps and beating them when they tried to resist. The rescue was not gentle. The human soldiers who entered the depot were not the same peaceful people who had built New Seoul Station. They were warriors who had been forged in the fires of grief and rage. They showed no mercy to the Vorthans who had participated in the slave trade. Every alien who had hurt a human prisoner was killed on the spot. Lieutenant Bae Suha found a group of children who had been taken from New Seoul Station during the massacre. They were scared and hungry, and some of them were sick from the poor conditions. In the alien prison, she knelt down beside them and spoke in a gentle voice, telling them they were safe now and that they were going home. The children looked at Lieutenant Bae Suha with wide eyes because they had not seen a kind human face in months. They had been told by their alien captors that all humans were dead and that no one was coming to save them. Now they clung to her uniform and cried with relief as she carried them to the rescue ships. The human forces freed over 200 slaves from the depot and loaded them onto medical ships that would take them back to Earth for treatment. The rescued humans told stories of other prison camps and slave markets scattered throughout Vorthan space. Each story added more fuel to the fire of human fury. Before leaving the depot, Captain Cho Hyun-woo activated the broadcasting system that the Vorthans had used to sell footage of the New Seoul massacre. Now the system transmitted recordings of the depot destruction to every alien network in the galaxy. The message was simple: humanity had come for revenge and they were just getting started. The footage showed human ships moving with impossible precision and using weapons that seemed like magic to other species. It showed Vorthan battleships being destroyed by opponents they had thought were primitive and weak. It showed human soldiers rescuing their people with a combination of tactical brilliance and savage fury. News of the depot attack spread through the galaxy faster than the human ships could travel. Alien civilizations that had been trading with the Vorthans suddenly found reasons to break their contracts. Species that had been planning to attack human colonies decided to reconsider their plans. The balance of power in the galaxy had shifted overnight. The Vorthan High Command tried to dismiss the attack as a lucky strike by desperate humans, but more reports kept coming in. Human ships were appearing throughout Vorthan space, striking at supply lines and communication networks and military installations. The attacks were coordinated and precise, and absolutely devastating. General Kim Dong-yuk's strategy was working perfectly. The human forces were not trying to conquer territory or hold positions, they were hunting. Vorthons, like the aliens, had hunted human families. They struck without warning, rescued any humans they found, and disappeared before enemy reinforcements could arrive. The psychological impact was even more effective than the physical damage. Human voices speaking perfect Vorthon languages appeared on alien communication networks, reading the names of the dead from New Seoul Station. The broadcasts always ended with Dr. Park Hannah final words, "Please, they are just babies, Captain Cho Hyun-woo ship." The Hannah Vengeance became a legend of terror among Vorthon pilots. The ship appeared and disappeared like a ghost, striking at impossible angles and always leaving behind a pile of alien corpses and a message carved into the wreckage: "Remember New Seoul." The Vorthons placed the highest bounty in galactic history on Captain Cho Hyun-woo's head, but no one dared try to collect it. The few aliens who had survived encounters with his ship described weapons and tactics that seemed to violate the laws of physics. The captain had become the living embodiment of human fury. Lieutenant Bae Suha used her communication skills to spread fear throughout the Vorthon military. She would intercept their private messages and replace them with recordings from the massacre. Alien soldiers would try to call their families, only to hear the death screams of human children coming through their communication devices. The hunt had begun, and the Vorthons were learning what it felt like to be prey. The aliens, who had laughed while murdering human families, now jumped at shadows and slept with weapons beside their beds. They had awakened something in humanity that they did not understand and could not control. Other alien species watched the broadcasts with growing unease. The peaceful humans they had known were gone, replaced by something far more dangerous. The galaxy was learning that humanity kindness had been a choice, not a weakness, and that choice could be taken away by anyone foolish enough to hurt human children. The Vorthon Dominion was about to discover that they had made the worst mistake in galactic history. They had turned a species of peaceful explorers into a race of implacable hunters, and the hunt was just beginning. Admiral Han Kyung-soo was sitting in a boring meeting about military budgets when the emergency beacon from New Seoul Station finally reached Earth. The message had traveled through subspace for 6 weeks, carrying the most terrible news that humanity had ever received. The admiral was reading reports about fuel costs and weapon maintenance when his aide burst into the room with tears streaming down her face. The aide handed Admiral Han Kyung-soo a datapad that contained video recordings from the massacre. Her hands were shaking so badly she could barely hold the device. The admiral took the pad and started watching the footage, not knowing that what he was about to see would change him forever and would change the entire human species. The first video showed the Vorthon warships destroying the station shields while Kim Tae-yang and his fellow engineers died trying to protect their families. The second video showed Dr. Park Hannah's final moments as she tried to shield wounded children from alien soldiers. The third video showed the execution of Ambassador Yoon Ji-ho and the burning of the school where children had learned to be friends. Admiral Han Kyung-soo watched every second of the footage, even though each image felt like a knife being twisted in his heart. He saw families being torn apart. He saw children being murdered. He saw the peaceful colony that humanity had built with love and hope being destroyed by aliens who treated human life like it was worth nothing. Admiral's hands began to shake as he watched the Vorthon soldiers laughing while they killed innocent people. He saw them loading human children onto slave ships like they were cargo. He saw them planting their battle flags in the ruins of homes where families had lived and loved and dreamed of a better future. When the footage ended, Admiral Han Kyung-soo sat in silence for a long time, staring at the blank screen. His aide was crying quietly in the corner, but the admiral felt something much deeper than sadness. He felt a cold rage building inside him, like a fire that would never go out. He felt the fury of a species that had been peaceful by choice, not by weakness. The admiral called President Lim So-young and told her she needed to see the footage immediately. Within 2 hours, every leader on Earth had watched the recordings from New Seoul Station. The presidents and prime ministers and kings and queens of every nation sat in stunned silence as they witnessed the slaughter of their fellow humans. President Lim So-young called an emergency session of the Global Assembly. Representatives from every country on Earth Gathered in the great hall where they had once debated trade agreements and environmental policies, now they sat in silence, watching the most horrible thing any of them had ever seen. The chamber was completely quiet as the footage played on the giant screens. Everyone watched Dr. Park Hana die protecting children. Everyone watched Kim Taeyang sacrifice his life to keep the shields working. Everyone watched teacher Song Minji try to save her students. Everyone watched Ambassador Yoon Jiho executed like a common criminal. When the videos ended, the silence in the chamber stretched for minutes that felt like hours. Then President Lim So-young stood up and spoke in a voice that was quiet but filled with steel. "We will not let this stand," she said. "We will not let them think humanity is weak. We will show them what happens when they hurt our people." Vote was unanimous. Every single representative from every single nation on Earth voted to commit their military forces to the response. Against the Vorthan Dominion, there would be no politics, no arguments, no debates. There would be only justice for the innocent people who had died, and vengeance for the monsters who had killed them. The peaceful trading ships that had carried goods between Earth and the colonies were recalled immediately and sent to military shipyards for conversion. The factories that had been making civilian products switched to producing weapons and armor and ammunition. The entire planet mobilized for war in a way that had not been seen since the ancient world. WARSDR Shin Ye-jin was the most brilliant physicist on Earth, and she had spent her career developing new technologies for peaceful purposes. Now she was given unlimited funding and told to create weapons that could destroy the aliens who had murdered human families. She worked 18 hours a day, driven by the same cold fury that burned in every human heart. Military research facilities that had been developing better ways to explore space and help other species were converted to weapons. Lab scientists who had been studying how to cure diseases and grow food in space were now learning how to kill aliens as efficiently as possible. The entire scientific community of Earth focused on one goal. General Kim Dong-yuk was the greatest military strategist that humanity had ever produced. He had studied every war in human history, and he understood how to use fear and surprise and overwhelming force to destroy an enemy. Now he studied the Vorthan Dominion and looked for weaknesses that could be exploited. The general knew that the Vorthans had superior numbers and better technology, but they had made crucial mistakes when they attacked New Sol Station. They had underestimated human determination. They had revealed their locations by broadcasting the massacre. They had given humanity a reason to fight with absolute fury. The preparation took 8 months. Earth shipyards worked around the clock, building vessels that were designed not for exploration or trade but for destruction. The new ships carried experimental weapons that pushed the boundaries of physics. They had armor that could survive inside a star and engines that could outrun light itself. The volunteer crews that trained to fly these new warships were different from the peaceful explorers who had built New Sol Station. These were people who had lost family members in the massacre, or who had watched the footage and felt the same burning rage that consumed all of humanity. They trained for scenarios that other species would consider impossible or insane. Captain Cho Hyun-woo had been a freight pilot who carried supplies between Earth and the colonies. His wife had been visiting New Sol Station when the Vorthans attacked, and she had died in the medical center trying to help Dr. Park Hana save the wounded. Now he learned to fly attack ships that could survive temperatures that would melt most metals. Lieutenant Bae Soo-ha had been a communications officer on a peaceful research vessel. Her younger brother had been one of the children killed in teacher Song Minji classroom. Now she mastered systems that could hack into alien networks and turn their own technology against them. She learned to speak the Vorthan language better than most Vorthans. The weapons that Dr. Shin Ye-jin developed were beyond anything the galaxy had ever seen. They could accelerate projectiles to significant fractions of light speed. They could manipulate gravity to crush enemy ships. They could hack alien computer systems and make them explode from the inside. The technology was so advanced it seemed like magic, but the most dangerous weapon that humanity developed was not made of metal or energy. It was the cold, calculating fury of a species that had been pushed too far. The humans who prepared for war were not the same peaceful people who had built New Sol Station. Those people had died with Dr. Park Hana and Kim Taeyang and all the others, the new humans, were something the galaxy had never seen before they were a species. That had chosen to be peaceful and kind and helpful, but who could become the most dangerous predators in the universe when their families were threatened. They were about to teach the Vorthans and every other species a lesson that would be remembered forever. When the Earth Defense Force finally launched toward Vorthan space, they carried with them the recorded final words of every human who had died in the massacre. They carried the names of every child who had been murdered. They carried the fury of an entire species that had been peaceful by choice, not by weakness. The hunt was about to begin, and the galaxy would never be the same. The first Vorthan warship broke through the morning sky like a black knife cutting through butter. The ship was massive, bigger than any building on New Sol Station, and it moved with the slow, terrible grace of a predator that knew its prey could not escape. Behind it came dozens more warships, each one bristling with weapons that could turn mountains into dust. Commander Jang Wujin stood in the security center watching the enemy ships approach on his screens. He had been a soldier once, but that was long ago when he fought other humans in small wars on distant planets. He had never seen ships like these, never faced enemies who had weapons that could crack planets in half. The commander activated the emergency alarms that sent people running to the underground shelters that had been built deep in the station. His security teams took positions at the entrances, but their simple stun weapons seemed like toys compared to the massive guns on the alien warships. Commander Jang Wujin knew they could not win this fight, but he also knew they had to try. The station shields came online, powered by Kim Taeyang fusion reactors. The energy barriers glowed blue around New Sol Station like a soap bubble protecting a flower, but the Vorthan ships had weapons that were designed to crack the shields of military fortresses, not peaceful colonies. The first plasma blast hit the shields and made them flicker like a candle in the wind. Kim Taeyang was in the reactor room with 200 other engineers trying to keep the shields working. The massive machines were running at full power, creating so much heat that the air itself seemed to burn. The engineers worked desperately, checking systems and replacing parts that burned out under the strain. Nobody spoke about what would happen if the shields failed. The second plasma blast from the Vorthan ships hit the shields harder than the first. The energy barrier around the station cracked like glass, and pieces of it fell away like broken dreams. Kim Taeyang saw the warning lights flashing red on all his screens, and he knew the shields would not hold much longer. Turned to the other engineers and saw the same knowledge in their eyes. They were going to die here, in this room full of machines that had powered a peaceful colony for 15 years, but they would die trying to protect the families sleeping in the shelters below. Kim Taeyang thought about his wife, Dr. Park Hannah, and hoped she would be safe in the medical center. The third plasma blast shattered the shields completely, and the Vorthan warships moved in for the kill. Their weapons lit up the sky with beams of energy that cut through the station hull like it was made of paper. The reactor room where Kim Taeyang worked exploded in a ball of fire that could be seen from space. He died instantly, along with all the other engineers who had tried to keep their families safe. Dr. Park Hannah felt the station shake when the reactor exploded, and she knew her husband was dead. She had been a doctor long enough to know what that kind of explosion meant, but she could not think about Kim Taeyang now, because the medical center was full of people who needed her help. The wounded were being brought in faster than she could treat them. Vorthan soldiers broke through the station hull using cutting tools that melted metal like butter. They wore armor that made them look like mechanical demons, and they carried weapons that could turn a human body into ash in seconds. They moved through the corridors of New Sol Station like death itself, hunting for anyone who tried to hide. Dr. Park Hannah heard the alien soldiers coming down the corridor toward the medical center. She looked around at the wounded people lying on beds and stretchers. Many of them were children who had been hurt when the station shook apart. She could not leave them, and she would not leave them even if it meant she would die. The medical center doors exploded inward, and Vorthan soldiers poured into the room like a black tide. Their weapons were already charged and ready to fire. Dr. Park Hannah stepped in front of the wounded people and held up her hands. She was not a soldier, and she had no weapons, but she would not let them hurt her patients. The lead Vorthan soldier looked at Dr. Park Hannah, through the glowing red eyes of his helmet. He could see that she was just a doctor trying to protect sick people, but he had orders to kill all humans no matter who they were. The Vorthan Dominion did not believe in mercy or compassion or any of the things that made humans different from monsters. Dr. Park Hannah looked at the alien soldiers and saw no mercy in their mechanical faces. She thought about all the people she had helped over the years, all the children. She had healed all the alien visitors who had trusted her with their lives. She thought about Kim Taeyang and how much she loved him and how she would see him again soon. The doctor turned to look at the wounded people behind her, especially the children who were crying and scared. She wanted them to know that someone cared about them even at the end. She wanted them to know that not everyone in the universe was cruel and heartless. Like the Vorthan soldiers, Dr. Park Hannah spoke her last words in a voice that was soft and gentle even though she was facing death. "Please," she said, "they are just babies." The station emergency systems recorded everything, including her final moments. And those words would be heard across the galaxy before the war was over. The Vorthan soldier fired his weapon and Dr. Park Hannah fell to the floor. Her body was broken, but her spirit had already joined her husband in whatever place good people go. When they die, the alien soldiers then turned their weapons on the wounded people and the children and killed them all without hesitation or regret. The massacre continued for 3 days and 3 nights. The Vorthan soldiers hunted humans through the corridors and rooms of New Sol Station like they were hunting animals for sport. They killed families in their homes. They killed children in their schools. They killed old people who could barely walk. They killed everyone they could find. Teacher Song Minji died trying to protect her students in the school where she had taught children from different species to be friends. The alien soldiers burned all the books and artwork and poems that the children had made together. They destroyed everything that showed humans and aliens could live in peace. Ambassador Yoon Ji-ho was captured alive and brought to the main plaza where the Vorthans had set up cameras to broadcast across the galaxy. They wanted other species to see what happened to humans who thought they could be peaceful in a violent universe. The ambassador was executed publicly while alien cameras recorded every moment. The Vorthans took survivors as slaves, loading them onto transport ships that would carry them to labor camps. On distant worlds, they laughed while they worked, treating the destruction of human families like it was entertainment. They recorded everything, planning to sell the footage to other species as proof that humans were weak and easy to defeat. Little Park So-min and Kim Jae-woo hid in the ruins of their home, listening to the screams and explosions outside. They were just children, but they had seen their parents die and they had seen their friends murdered by alien soldiers. They held each other tight and promised they would remember everything so they could tell someone what happened. When the killing finally stopped, 47,000 humans were dead. The beautiful colony that had taken 15 years to build was nothing but smoking ruins and broken dreams. Only 3,000 people survived, and most of them were children who would be sold as slaves. The Vorthans planted their battle flags in the ashes and prepared to leave. The Vorthan soldiers had made a terrible mistake. They thought they had destroyed humanity's spirit by killing innocent people. They thought they had proven that peace was weakness and kindness was foolishness. They thought they had won an easy victory that would make other species fear them, but they had left survivors to tell the story, and they had no idea what humans would do when they learned that their families had been murdered by alien monsters who treated children like toys to be broken. The Vorthans flew away from New Sol Station, thinking they had won a great victory, but they had actually signed their own death warrant, the emergency beacon that would carry news of the massacre to Earth was already flying through space at faster than light speed. In 6 weeks, the people of Earth would learn what happened to their peaceful colony, and then the galaxy would learn what human fury really looked like when it was unleashed without mercy or restraint. Captain Lee Min-ho woke up every morning to the sound of children laughing in the gardens below his apartment window. The sound made him smile because it reminded him why humans had come to this distant planet 15 years ago. They had come to build something beautiful, something peaceful, something that would make their families proud. New Sol Station was not like the war stations that other alien species built in space. This station was different. It had parks with real grass and flowers. Where kids could run and play, it had wide open spaces where families could have picnics under the artificial sky. The builders had made sure every window showed either the gardens or the stars, because they wanted people to feel happy when they looked outside. Down in the medical center, Dr. Park Hannah was already starting her day. She had been the colony doctor for 12 years, and she knew every person who lived on the station. When little Kim Jae-woo scraped his knee playing spaceball, she would clean it up and give him a candy that tasted like earth strawberries. When old Mr. Choi had trouble with his heart, she would sit with him and hold his hand while the machines made him better. Dr. Park Hannah was the kind of doctor who remembered everyone's birthday and always had time to listen when people were worried or scared. She had gentle hands and a soft voice that made even the biggest tough guys feel better when they were hurt. The alien traders who visited the station always asked to see her when they got sick because they trusted her more than their own doctors. Her husband, Kim Tae-yang, worked in the big fusion reactors that powered the whole station. He was an engineer who could fix anything that broke and make any machine work better than it did. Before, the fusion reactors were huge metal rooms full of pipes and computers and energy that glowed like tiny stars. Kim Tae-yang knew every wire and every bolt in those reactors like they were his own children. The fusion reactors were not weapons like the ones that warships used. They were peaceful machines that made electricity for hospitals and schools and homes. They powered the farms where people grew food and the factories where they made things that other species wanted to buy. Kim Tae-yang was proud that his work helped families live good lives instead of helping soldiers fight wars. Every morning, Kim Tae-yang would walk through the reactor rooms, checking everything to make sure it was working right. He would talk to other engineers about their families and their plans for the weekend. He would smile when he heard children playing in the corridors above because he knew his work was keeping them safe and warm. The colony had 50,000 people living on it, and they all knew each other like one big family. There were the Park family, who ran the best restaurant on the station, where they served food that mixed Earth recipes with alien spices. There were the Kim family, who owned the shop where you could buy anything from Earth music to alien toys. There were the Choi family, who taught the children in school about history and science and art. Ambassador Yoon Ji-ho spent his days meeting with alien visitors who came to trade with the humans. He was good at learning alien languages and understanding how different species thought and felt. He had made friends with 17 different alien races, and they all trusted him because he was always honest and fair. The ambassador office was full of gifts from alien friends. There were crystal sculptures from the Kelthans, who looked like big insects but were actually very smart and kind. There were metal paintings from the Nexari, who had blue skin and could see colors that humans could not see. There were music boxes from the Zephyrians, who loved to sing songs about their home planet's ambassador. Yoon Ji-ho was proud that humans had a reputation for being peaceful and helpful when the insect-like Kelthans had a civil war that destroyed their cities. Human doctors and engineers had gone to help rebuild when the blue-skinned Nexari had problems with their food supply. Human farmers had taught them new ways to grow crops. When alien children got lost in space, human ships would always stop to help them find their way home. The school on New Seoul Station was run by teacher Song Min-ji, who had been teaching for 20 years. She loved children, and she loved learning new things every day. She would teach human children about Earth history and alien children about their own cultures. She used holographic computers that could show what dinosaurs looked like, or how alien cities were built on distant worlds. Teacher Song Min-ji classroom was full of artwork made by children from different species. Human kids would draw pictures of their families, and alien kids would draw pictures of their homeworlds. Then they would share their drawings and learn about each other. The walls were covered with paintings and stories and poems written in a dozen different languages. The children who grew up on New Seoul Station were special because they learned to be friends with beings who looked completely different from them. Little Park So-min was 8 years old, and her best friend was a young Kelthan whose name sounded like clicking sounds, but who was very funny and smart. Kim Jae-woo was 10, and he could speak 3 alien languages because he liked to talk to the traders who visited the station. The colony had small security forces led by Commander Jang Woojin, who had been a soldier on Earth before he came to the station. But the security forces were not like army soldiers, they were more like police officers who helped solve problems and kept everyone safe. They had simple weapons that could stun people without hurting them badly because they almost never needed to fight anyone, Commander. Jang Wujin liked his job because most days he just had to help settle arguments between neighbors, or find lost pets, or make sure the docking bays were safe when alien ships arrived. He had not fired his weapon in anger for over 5 years because people on New Seoul Station got along well with each other and with their alien visitors, the human. Ships that flew around the colony were built for exploring and trading, not for fighting. They had big cargo holds for carrying goods to sell and comfortable quarters for passengers who wanted to travel to other worlds. They had strong shields to protect against space rocks and radiation, but they did not have the huge weapons that warships carried. The humans on New Seoul Station were proud that they had built something beautiful in space without hurting anyone. They traded fairly with aliens and shared their knowledge freely. They helped anyone who needed help, and they tried to be good neighbors to all the species they met. Their reputation for being peaceful and trustworthy had spread across the galaxy, but being peaceful also meant being vulnerable. The colonists had chosen to trust instead of fear, to help instead of hurt, to build instead of destroy. They had made their home among the stars by being kind and generous and smart, but they had also made themselves targets for anyone who saw kindness as weakness. When the long-range sensors detected massive alien fleets approaching the colony, the colonists felt fear like they had never felt before. The approaching ships were not traders or explorers, they were warships belonging to the Vorthan Dominion, a cruel empire that conquered weaker species and enslaved anyone they could not kill. The colonists sent desperate messages to Earth begging for help, but Earth was many months away even at the fastest space travel speeds. The Vorthan warships filled the sky around New Seoul Station like dark metal clouds blotting out the stars. As families held each other tight and children asked why the bad aliens were coming, no one knew that their peaceful way of life was about to end forever. The Vorthans had made a terrible mistake. They thought that peaceful humans would be easy to defeat. They thought that kindness meant weakness. They were about to learn that the most dangerous enemy is one who has everything to lose and nothing left to fear.